We only have a couple minutes left, so is there any last words that you would like to leave the listening audience here in Vancouver?
Yeah, I would just like to reiterate that this was really a large-scale operation against the civilian population that were utterly defenseless. Sure, there's resistance here, but when you compare what the resistance is using, which is essentially homemade missiles, against the world's fourth largest army, you can compare the arsenal that world's fourth largest army was using on the population and realize that they had nowhere to run to. There were absolutely no bomb shelters. There's nowhere safe, so it's not like, it's really not like a surgical targeted attack like it was being made out to be in the news. It was an area where, like, I did not feel safe. Anywhere I was in Gaza, I did not feel safe. In an apartment, in a hospital, in a media building, there was nowhere safe. So I just think it's really important that people understand how widespread these attacks were, how ongoing they were. They were for at least 22 days of incessant fear, and I just think that if people understand that and understand how the destruction of someone's home is a tremendous thing. It's not just a fact and a figure, and each death is not just a number. It's a life that's lost that really affects everybody in their family. It might be a source of income, or obviously just losing a loved one in a traumatic way is difficult enough. So I just think that I hope that people can really appreciate what a devastating war on Gaza this really was.
Well, thank you very much for coming on there, Eva. That's Eva Bartlett, and this is Co-op Radio 102.7 FM CFRO on Monday Brown Bagger. We're going to go back to Kevin and Annette right now, and if you could continue your thought there, Kevin. As I'm sorry for interrupting you. We had that person on the phone. Eva was on the phone.
Well, no, that's fine. Bringing together the different themes, though. Martin Luther King used to talk about how you couldn't really be for civil rights and justice in America and ignore the fact that his own country was the biggest purveyor of violence in the world. He said an injustice abroad is as much a threat to him as justice. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice anywhere, was what he often said. So I think we have to keep that in mind if people want to invoke his spirit today on his 80th birthday. We have to remember that it doesn't matter what the window dressing is down south now that you have a black president. The policies are the same. Barack is still sending 20,000 troops to Afghanistan. He's still handing billions of dollars, trillions of dollars to the corporations and saying everybody else has to tighten their belt. What is different?
We also have to remember that he's going to keep 30,000 troops, U.S. troops, I've heard reports, in Iraq, and he's going to increase the troops over in Afghanistan. And we also have to remember at the same time that the Democrats were in power in the Senate and the House when Bush was for the last term of I think it was 2006 when they took power of the Senate. And so at the same time we have to realize that the Democrats had the ability to stop the Iraqi war. However, they became complicit in the crime itself by not stopping the Iraq war. And that was a point brought up by Cindy Sheehan. And I'd just like to bring that point up again. And I say, Carol, would you like to add something to that?
No.
Well, the thing that's ironic, if you can use such a word with this situation, is that in April 19th, 1943, the Jews of the ghetto, Warsaw Ghetto, with homemade weapons rose up against the Nazi war machine, and they fought them for 40 days and were eventually exterminated. It's ironic that the Israelis have reversed historically and are now the big superpower out to crush a relatively defenseless people. And in their own mind, for just cause and everything, just like the Nazis were convinced the Jews were a threat. But it's ironic how history comes around and the oppressed become the oppressor, just like we find with the legacy of genocide here in Canada.
Yeah, we have to keep remembering that. And I'd also like to point out earlier when I was talking about the Ukrainians, that was World War I, not World War II, as it pointed out to me. I wrote an article on it, and that's how I remember it. And I found out about the information when I was down in the United States. I didn't find out the information here in Canada. An awful lot of information I did find out about, especially I wrote this one article that talked about Dudley George when he was assassinated by the OPP sniper over in Ipperwash. It was a 12-page article that I wrote, and I was able to acquire information down in the U.S. that they were not able to acquire here in Canada. So it shows you that there's a certain degree of censorship happening here in Canada where some information is not being allowed to the people. Any thought on that, Kevin?
I mean, I do have thoughts, but we're running out of time, and I'm thinking
we should wrap it up right now. So I'd just like to remind people this Co-op Radio 102.7 FM CFRO. This is Monday Brown Bagger. It is the January 19th, and thank you very much for tuning in.